What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I've got a really quick Warzone video for you guys, answering one of the most common questions I've been getting since the Vanguard integration into Warzone, and this is, how are suppressors and Subsonic different, if at all? Do they both keep you off the radar when you're firing? Do they both keep you off the compass? And do they differ in any way like they do in Vanguard's multiplayer? There's actually a very noticeable difference between these two when it comes to the radar interaction. I will leave a link to that video down below if you guys are curious about how these work in Vanguard's multiplayer. But basically, I'm just going to be breaking these down today and sharing exactly how they work and whether or not you should be using Subsonic or Suppressor, or maybe even both. And I'm going to start this video off by letting you guys know that these suppressors, when it comes to radar and compass interaction, work exactly the same as the Modern Warfare and the Cold War suppressors. And that just means if you're using a suppressor from the muzzle attachment on your gun, and you fire your weapon, you will not be showing up on either the minimap or the compass for firing the gun. Obviously, you can still show up there if you're not using Ghost and an enemy calls a UAV in, for instance. I'm just talking about for firing your gun, it will keep you hidden from both of those. But what about Subsonic? Well, it turns out, even if you're just using Subsonic all by itself, this will also keep you 100% hidden from the minimap as well as the compass when firing your gun, just like the suppressor does. So you definitely don't need to run both of these. That's completely redundant. I definitely wouldn't recommend doing that either. However, I did want to highlight one of the big differences outside of the other stated stats. We'll talk about those in a little bit. But one of the biggest differences between a suppressor and the subsonic ammo type is just how audible your shots are. And this may be something that's very important for you to consider. It turns out with the regular silencer or suppressor attachments in the muzzle section for Vanguard weapons, like I said, they work exactly the same as the other suppressors, and what this means is the gunfire itself is 100% inaudible to anybody that's more than 100 meters away from you. There is an exact threshold of 100 meters where beyond that, you can't hear the gunfire. You can still hear the bullets hitting around you, you can hear the bullets whizzing by you, but you won't hear the gun go off, and therefore it's nearly impossible to pinpoint where you're being shot from through audio alone. Whereas with the subsonic attachment, we don't gain this audible benefit. And what this means is, audibly, it sounds exactly the same as not using a suppressor or any attachments on your gun, and this means enemies can hear your gunfire up to 400 meters away.
Target spotted.
And that's just something you don't need to worry about with suppressors. So if an enemy is at a different point of interest or they're passing by your point of interest and you're firing your gun, with a suppressor, there's a good chance they won't even hear that gunshot at all, and therefore they won't come after you. Whereas with Subsonic, they're gonna know you're there and they can come hunting for you, even though they can't see you on the radar. Now, in addition to this, I did want to talk about the in-menu stated stats. And with Subsonic specifically, at least on like the regular guns in the game, one of the pros is improved firing visibility to enemies. So presumably, since this is a pro, that means that they should have a hard time seeing your like tracer effect or your muzzle flash or something. But as far as I've been able to test here, it looks identical. I feel like this is something they just copied and pasted over from Vanguard, like the text for it, but it doesn't actually affect any stats in game. Maybe I'm wrong on that and somebody will figure out what this actually means, but as far as I can tell, it doesn't really change anything. You can still see that tracer effect, no problem whatsoever, when the enemy is using subsonic ammo. And this is where I want to talk about the cons of the subsonic. And again, I'm going to be focusing mainly on the regular guns like SMGs, assault rifles. And the con with subsonic is going to be a loss of bullet velocity. And bullet velocity is extremely important in Warzone. This is essentially the stat that determines how good your hit detection feels, especially at longer ranges. Most of your fights are going to be at range. This is how much you're going to have to lead your target. And you almost always want to have the best bullet velocity possible, unless you're just using a setup that's designed for only close ranges. Whereas when we look at the downsides of the Vanguard suppressors, with the Mercury silencer, this one will improve your recoil control, which Subsonic doesn't do, and the only downside to this is your damage range is lost. I personally would rather lose damage range over bullet velocity in Warzone, but that's just me. And then we have the other silencer that we have access to for Vanguard weapons, and this is the one that improves the accuracy stat on your weapon, so it reduces the amount of bloom or aim down sight spread that your gun is experiencing. And the downside to using this is a loss to our aim down sight time, which for many people, that's totally fine. It depends on the build that you're going for. So there we have it. That pretty much wraps it up for the whole silencer versus subsonic debate here for Vanguard weapons. Personally, I think the silencers are definitely the better option because you get that audible benefit where nobody beyond 100 meters can hear your gunfire. And to top that off, the downsides to using suppressors just aren't as punishing for Warzone at least compared to using subsonic, in my opinion. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean you should never use subsonic. There's definitely a place for subsonic, and this would be in cases where we have a very high recoil gun, because there are a lot of really good muzzle attachments that can significantly improve your recoil control, much better than any of the silencers can. So in some cases, you might want to use something like a compensator, or you might want to use the recoil booster, for instance, to improve your fire rate, but you still don't want to be showing up on the minimap or the compass. This is a great place for using subsonic. You just have to keep in mind your bullet velocity is dropping with this, and on top of this, enemies will hear your gunfire out to 400 meters. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Of course, I'd like to hear from you guys in the comment section below. What do you think about the idea of having these two separate attachment slots that can potentially keep you off the radar? Do you like the fact that you have that option to stay off the radar without being forced to use a silencer in the muzzle attachment slot? Or would you prefer if they just kept it simple and it were silencers only and subsonic did something totally different? Just let me know those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.